Welcome everyone to the November 2024 Raleigh Astronomy Club indoor meeting. Anybody here for the first time today? Oh, quite a few hands. Welcome everybody. Glad you could come. All right, so we will have a presentation in a moment, a couple announcements to start with. Please be respectful of other people asking questions. Amy has asked that we interrupt her, and actually she's going to ask us a bunch of questions, so be ready to answer questions. And yeah, let's see here. Oh, and will you repeat the questions, or we do the microphone runner? Microphone? Okay, excellent. So we'll hand you a microphone if you could please use the microphone to answer or ask a question. Okay. Safety stuff. Room hazards. So there's cables behind the projector. Please try not to trip. Watch out for chairs with bags beside them. We don't have low light right now. Yes, Blair? Yeah? Oh, yes, please. Thank you. It's usually darker in here. Sorry. Oh, almost. Just one. All right. Some good mood lighting. Okay. Anybody CPR certified? No. Yours expired, so we got a couple maybes in the back. Emergency caller. Dana, thank you. And fire equipment. We've got a fire extinguisher over there by the door. If you're remote, just please be aware of your surroundings. Don't watch this while walking around. I did not, but I can. There's a key for anybody in the room that needs to use the restroom. There's a key on the table, and the restroom's right through the door, and then on the left. If you need help, please ask. Oh, I skipped that one. Emergency exit. So there's an exit right there through the door, and then if we go out and left, there's another exit. Okay. Real quick upcoming events. On the 23rd, we have Prairie Ridge Ecosystem. Yeah, sorry, Eco Station. And then December 4th, STEM night at Apex Friendship Elementary School. Is that ES? Okay. Okay. If you're a volunteer, register with the Wake County Public School System, please. If we have enough people tonight, we'll go out to Sammy's. We'll do a show of hands towards the end, or well, maybe now. Anybody interested in going out for dinner, desserts? Okay, we got 3, 4, 5. All right. Okay, more and more as we get more. Okay, excellent. All right. Tonight, I need my cheat sheet for my intro. Sorry. Dr. Amy Sayle is a science educator, specialist at UNC Morehead Planetarium and Science Center. In 2013, she founded the annual North Carolina statewide star party, 35 sky watching events. Yeah, it's awesome. If you haven't been, you should participate as either a volunteer or just go. 35 sky watching events that happen on the same weekend at sites from the mountains to the coast, and supported by RAC and other North Carolina astronomy clubs. She enjoys sharing the science and stories of the stars under the planetarium dome, as well as under the real night sky in North Carolina and at Bryce Canyon National Park. Dr. Aim?
Thanks.
We will do a quick switch of presentations and then get started.
Okay, I think I am unmuted. Yes? Okay, great. Wow, apparently I have lots of power. It's asking me questions about what I want to do here. Let's see if this works. Yay? No? Not yay. It thinks I'm sharing. Okay, great. All right. So, Thou shalt not speak Messier, effectively engaging the public at skywatching events. I did do a version of this presentation for RAC 3 years ago, which seems to me like a really long time ago. But for any of you that have assiduously attended all RAC meetings for the last 3 years, it's possible some things may seem a little familiar. I did update it some. And I'm putting you on alert that I'm going to be asking for lots of participation, not just from everybody here in the room, but also the folks who are watching online as well. No sleeping. Okay, so first up, let's see if I have the power to change my own slides. Here we go. Okay, I have a question for you all. What is your favorite telescope object and why? And when I say favorite telescope object, I mean either to show other people, like at a skywatching event, or just that you like to look at yourself. Saturn! Okay. Wait, I want to know why though. Who's got the microphone? Who's got the walk around? Yeah. Okay, tell us about why do you like to show Saturn?
Saturn. So when we put Saturn in the eyepiece, and first of all, you've got so many people who never looked through an eyepiece before. And what I've been doing lately is saying, okay, I'll know when you see it because you'll go, wow. And they look at me with like deer in the headlights, or they think, yeah, no, not going to happen to me. And the second they look in the eyepiece, they go, wow. And so it's a big, it's a big deal for somebody to see the planet for the first time. And then half of the people are, we've got people looking at the front of the scope going, there's a picture of this in here somewhere.
Right. Where's the sticker? Right. That's great. And somebody said Jupiter. Who said Jupiter? Is that Anne?
So
why Jupiter?
So Jupiter is really interesting because it has the 4 moons. So you have to look at the whole system. Oh, of course, it has more than those 4 Galilean moons, but it has the 4 main ones. So that's what I like to look at and I think others like that. And of course, it has a giant red spot, which is interesting in and of itself. So that's why I would choose Jupiter.
Okay, excellent choice. And somebody said Pleiades. Who said that? Yeah. Oh, right next to you, man.
I choose Pleiades. Of course, around this time of year, it's at its prime, and it's mainly just for like local color kind of thing. Because I tell them that look at the star cluster of Pleiades, and then you look at, and most people don't know about this, that Durham County has its own flag, or at least the city of Durham does, and the Pleiades is on it. And I tell them, you look at the constellation, or excuse me, you look at Pleiades, and you ask them like, what constellation is it in? And of course, I drive them along, and it's in the constellation Taurus, and well, there you go. Bull City is why it's on the flag. And then also, just to throw it in there, it's the Subaru logo as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Doug, you had one?
Yeah, so I've always loved it. It's the great nebula in Orion. It's always been my favorite. So colorful, so pretty. But I also like to tell people that this is a star nursery and there are stars being born. And it's great to be able to say, and here is an example of some baby stars that have just broken out of their star cocoon. And so it's great to be able to talk about how stars are formed and how they can literally, when they are born like this, they can create these great, bright, beautiful nebula, which are basically just clouds in space. So.
That's great. I'm just going to have you all give my entire talk for me because you're making all my points already. How about we'll skip one more and then we'll move on.
Well, I agree with just the wow factor. It's Saturn and Jupiter and, the double cluster and things like that. I'd say for things I can take off from that are understandable, that are still the Andromeda Galaxy, because it's the deep space object. You could talk about the time involved and something that always is a profound thought is that little bright core that you're seeing, the light from the left side of it has not reached the dawn of human civilization still hasn't reached the right side. That I've got a lot of people kind of go, oh.
That's
talk about how it took 2 million, the light years, how long the light's been coming to you. it's, you know, you get a sense of the scale of the universe you're looking at it. And it's also an impressive object. Yeah. Plus the sky is just totally light blurred out.
And let me, that's the one thing point I'm going to make. I love it too. And I love the buildup. Like I was talking to my niece, I'm like, it's this galaxy, it's this far away, it's going to crash into us. It's all this stuff. And I'm building it all up. And she comes in and she looks at it, and we're in like Vienna, Virginia, just outside DC. And she looks at it, she goes, "You mean that little smudge?" I go, "Yes, that little smudge. That's exactly right."
But I wanted to see if there's anybody in the chat here. Orion. Okay. Okay.
They said Orion.
Great.
Can I add one more, Dr.
Thank you,
Amy?
Margot. Yes, you may.
I really like the thin crescent moon.
Mm-hmm.
So that I get a lot of wows on that when you start describing things. And Doug turned me on to the lunar X and lunar V.
Mm-hmm.
And so we show that a lot. So
Okay.
if it's out.
Yeah. Those are all great answers. Thank you. Okay. So y'all keep thinking about that. We're going to return to these questions if I can figure out how to get my slides back. All right, y'all. Oh, there we go. There we go. There we go. Okay. All right. Now there's going to be a quiz. Low stakes. You cannot get this wrong as long as you pay attention. Three seconds to study a picture. Memorize it. Be ready to list what you see in the picture. Okay. Ready? Get set. Go. Go. All right. What did you see? Those of you watching on Zoom, you're not off the hook. Type into the chat what you saw. What did you all see? Okay, we have a microphone over here. This person.
I saw the Little Dipper and the Big Dipper.
Little Dipper and Big Dipper.
with
Great.
the pictures in the constellation.
And pictures associated with them? Okay, great. Anybody else want to share what you saw?
Directions to the North Star, Polaris.
Ah, way to get to the North Star, Polaris. And I don't know if anybody's typing anything in the chat. Any chat action?
Ursa
Ursa Major. Okay. Somebody saw a bear in there. Okay. Great. Okay. One more. Get ready. All right. What did you see? I-40. At one point, I crested over a hill on I-40, and it looked like there was just like the world's biggest Christmas tree lit up coming at me. It was terrifying. Yes, go ahead. What did you see?
The world map with lots and lots of light pollution, so you can't see anything.
Light pollution, can't see anything, world's map. Okay, I heard somebody say gross also, which I thought was very interesting.
On the chat, we had someone say a world map of too much light for night viewing and light areas of the world.
Okay, great. Thank you. Wonderful. All right. What does that have to do with anything? Let's go back a second. You're going to think you went to the wrong presentation. So I wanted to tell you just a little bit about how I came to be here tonight. And I did not start out as a science communicator. I started out as a scientist and not as an astrophysicist or astronomer, but in public health as an epidemiologist. So two misconceptions about what epidemiologists do. No, it is not the study of skin, and it is a whole lot more than just infectious disease. So epidemiologists study the determinants and patterns of disease or any other health outcome in populations. And there, you can specialize in different types of health outcomes. So I did reproductive health. So I used to communicate science to scientists, like through scholarly articles and whatnot. So here's some bad memories. And I have written some of the most boring articles ever about sex published in the peer-reviewed literature. And Fortunately, I found a new career that I enjoy a whole lot more, which is, it took me a long time to maneuver into this new job, but I went from researching epidemiology to teaching writing about epidemiology to teaching writing about science to teaching science to the public at this place, Morehead Planetarium and Science Center. And I wonder, has anybody been there? I know some of you all have. Woohoo! Yes! Come visit us sometime. We're on the UNC campus. We're right downtown Chapel Hill. I do not recommend commuting on I-40 at night to get there or to get here. It was terrifying. Come in the daytime sometime. And so I get to teach people about the night sky and astronomy in a simulated sky, the planetarium dome, and also the real sky. And I love it that you mentioned the Pleiades on the Durham city flag. This is one of my most favorite blog posts that I've ever written. I love to point out that star cluster to audiences because there is always somebody from Durham in the audience. And they really enjoy that local connection. It's relevant to them. Same thing with the whole Subaru reference. There's always a Subaru in the parking lot outside of our building. So now when I communicate science, I get to do it. It's way more interesting, I think. And these are just a couple of examples. But I also get to do sky watching sessions. And this telescope was built by these UNC students under the guidance of RAC member Jim Presley. Almost 10 years ago, actually. It is still available for checkout through the science library at UNC. And these are the students out at Jordan Lake getting ready for a public event. And I also get to do paddling under the stars, and I get to coordinate what we think is the biggest statewide star party for the public in the entire universe. At some point, Minnesota is really going to give us a run for their money, for our money, because they also have a statewide star party now. And then we cannot do these events without the help of astronomy clubs across the state, and RAC has been absolutely instrumental in supporting numerous events most years. These are locations of the ones from the past year, and they always involve sky watching on the right there. And then this is just an example of a hands-on activity from some previous year. I think the theme was life in the universe that year. So we've been doing this for 13 years now. And but a lot of what I have to share with you tonight, I learned from the experts at the National Park Service. Yes, I was going to ask if anybody recognize this. This is Bryce Canyon National Park. Yeah, I've been there every summer for their astronomy festival. If you've never been to their annual astronomy festival, it's usually in June around new moon. I heard once that they try to time it so that it's after the park is in Utah, but they try to time it so it's after the California public schools have let out because you'll get more people in that case. And and then this is just an example of, so I do programs there for the Astronomy Festival, and this is just an evening program where they're acting out the Perseus and Andromeda skit. And I think I learned from this exact year to be very careful who you ask to play Cetus the sea monster and knock down the walls of Cassiopeia's and Cepheus's kingdom. I had a young boy try to attack the stage. So there we go. Okay. So now I have a question for you all. People in the chat, you are not exempt either. Have you ever participated at a sky watching event? I'm going to ask this two different ways. First off, as a telescope operator, have you ever worked at an event? Okay, so at least half the people in the room. I don't know if is anybody chatting with us, telling us that they've done it? Okay. What about, have you participated as an attendee? Okay, so fewer people in the room, but some of you all have done it. And I don't know if anybody in the chat is saying anything. Okay.
A couple people saying yes in chat.
Okay. So my next question for you is anybody planning on helping out at the November 23rd Prairie Ridge Eco Station event? Okay, so if you maybe not sure. Okay, almost a good number of y'all, at least a third of you, maybe even almost half. Okay, so I'm a little afraid to hit my next slide because I don't know if it's going to give away. Okay, good. Phew. Okay, so I have a question for you all, question for the people watching online also. Why do people attend skywatching events? This is not a trick question. I want you to think of all the possible reasons, noble and less noble, about why people attend skywatching events. When I brainstormed this earlier, I came up with at least 12 distinct categories of reasons. Okay, I think we need a microphone back there. Stephen
Well,
Blake.
I'm going to start with somebody in chat.
Oh, start with somebody
Then
in
I'll get to
chat.
Steve.
What do the chat people say?
Something to do.
Something to do. So
And
bored,
curiosity was
curiosity.
I had a woman literally tell me on Tuesday night, it was when she met her husband, they loved going out to Jordan Lake when Morehead was there because it was a free date.
A free date. Yeah. So they're connecting with somebody else. Okay.
You've got a couple more to see the wonders of heaven with other people that enjoy it. And you've got another one saying leaving Earth while staying on Earth.
Oh,
Kind
okay.
of a neat one.
Those are great.
And people want to see what things are out there.
Okay. Okay, so people who are already in the hobby and they want to see different types of observing equipment. Okay, great. Other reasons? Yes.
And like people want to see, like if they don't have a telescope, they can see what they want to see. For example, like Orion.
They want to see things that they can't see with their own eyes? Yeah,
Because they don't have a telescope or something.
because they don't have their own telescope. Yeah. Okay. Any other reasons?
Cheap.
It's cheap? Yeah, something to do that's cheap. It's the free date thing. Yeah. Anything else?
Show their kids the
Okay.
universe.
Outdoors, show their kid. Okay. Show their
Because
kids.
the neighbor who's into it gets them excited.
Okay.
I thought that was good.
That's
Learning from more experienced people. Chris was saying special events, comets, meteors, and eclipses.
A special event and they want to be part of it. Okay. I've run into people that are basically Instagramming their life. Especially this happens a lot. We do sessions at the Durham Hotel in downtown Durham, and we'll get people who didn't actually come to look through the eyepiece. They just want to take a really cool photo of them in their cocktail attire right next to the telescope and put it online. Like that has actually happened. That used to bug me. Now I just totally go with it, although I do make them look through the eyepiece. Okay, so I went ahead and boldly made a guess about some things you might have said and how you might categorize them. That I think some people go to learn or be inspired. They want to learn something new. They want to explore a new hobby or an old hobby, and they want to check out the other equipment. They want to feel awe and wonder. You all talked about people going, wow, when they see Saturn. It's something new for them. Their curiosity, somebody mentioned that. They just want to have a good time. It's something unique and special. Those are those meteor showers and eclipses. Also, and some of these things overlap as well, but also people go for connection. They're trying to make memories with their friends and their family, the fun date, the cheap date. They want to connect with experts, you all with the telescopes. They want to connect with their community, do a community event. They want to connect with nature. They want to be outside at night. They want to be on Earth, but look into the universe. Or they have some related interest. And I used to poo-poo people that are like, oh, I'm a Pisces. I was like, now I see that as an access point. All those astrologers, they're already interested. So let's just nudge them, to learn something new. Or mythology or cultural astronomy, there's lots of things. Photography, lots of people have related interests that you can connect to. Okay, so things to keep in mind when you are operating the telescope is why are people there? What are they hoping to get out of it? Everyone's different, but these are some common things. Okay, so these are my tips on interacting with visitors, and you all are welcome to argue with me or add some things. But in terms of helping people feel welcome and like they're going to have a good time and to figure out what you're going to say to them about the wonders of the heavenly bodies above them, helps to greet them, establish a connection right away, and then ask a question, preferably one that will reveal their background and interests. And I would emphasize here, don't make assumptions about what people already know or are interested in or not. Don't assume that the young girl knows nothing about the night sky or telescopes. Don't assume that the older man does. And questions you can ask, for example, have you looked through a telescope before? What brought you out tonight? Do you live in this city? What's the sky like where you live? And you can learn an enormous amount about somebody, why they came, and what kind of things they already know or don't by how they answer any of those questions. The one I tend to use is, have you looked through a telescope before? Especially if they're hesitant at all as they walk up, or if I'm worried they're going to be wild and just like go in with all hands. And you can tell from how they talk. If somebody says, "Oh, I heard there was a shooting star thing going on tonight," that tells you something different than if they said, "Well, I knew it was the peak night of the Geminid meteor shower, and that's why I came out." If they start asking you questions about, your telescope equipment in a way that indicates they already know a lot, you're going to talk to them differently than if somebody says, I don't know, if they say something that reveals that they don't really know why they're there. Okay, and then here's the really key part. Then act on what you learn by asking the question. I have probably told this story before in a meeting because I was so scarred by it, but I will tell it again. I went to an observatory in another state. I will not name the state or the observatory, and it was a number of years ago, and I have never forgotten. I was the only one there. It was me and my stepmother. And there was one guy operating the telescope. He did not ask me any questions, so I volunteered the information that I was traveling, I was visiting my stepmother, and that in North Carolina, I worked at a planetarium and that I organized skywatching sessions as part of my job. He proceeded to then talk to me like I had never heard of the planet Saturn. And it was so insulting that I now tell this story years later. So be sure to listen and act on what you learn. Okay, so, and then in terms of, well, what do you say to people about the cool thing you're showing them in the telescope? So I'm going to give you all a little crash course in interpretation 101. And I think you all could give this course as well, based on what you were saying earlier. But just to be clear, when I say interpretation, I'm not talking about translating from another language. I'm not talking about interpretive dance. I'm talking about the kind of stuff they do at national parks when you go to a night sky program. And it's not information. So when you are interpreting the night sky or an object in your telescope, you're not just listing facts. This got called once at Bryce Canyon, they called it the wildflower walk in the sky, where you're just sort of randomly throwing out information. And you're not just saying stuff that lacks meaning, and you don't want to just look like you're showing off your knowledge, which is what just listing a bunch of facts can come off like. And I think this quote from Walt Whitman really sums it up. And I'm wondering if there's a brave person who would be willing to read this slide into the microphone. The microphone is being picked up. It is ready to be delivered. Doug is willing. Okay, can we get that microphone over to Doug in the front? Yeah, we do. All right, go for it.
Right. When I heard the learned astronomer, when the proofs, the figures were ranged in columns before me, when I was shown the charts and the diagrams to add, divide, and measure them, when I, sitting, heard the astronomer, where he lectured with much applause in the lecture room, how soon, unaccountable, I became tired and sick, till rising and gliding out, I wandered off by myself in the mystical moist night air, and from time to time looked up in the perfect silence at the stars.
Okay, thank you. Nicely read. All right, that said, there are going to be people who come to the skywatching event at Prairie Ridge and they want to geek out with you about stellar classification, what's the temperature of that thing, and all the specs on your equipment. But I would argue that most of the people coming, they are there to look up at the stars and have a more emotional experience. Okay, so I'll give you an example of information versus interpretation. So I need another brave volunteer who is willing to read. Let me show you what I'm going to be asking you to read. An excerpt from a textbook, Astronomy Today. Somebody willing to read this out loud? Okay, Anne's willing. Thank you.
In 1956, radio observations of the planet were used to measure its thermal energy emission. The radiation emitted by the planet had a black body spectrum characteristic of a temperature near 730 K, which is kelvins.
I love how they put the exclamation point in the textbook. It's so exciting. And that will be exciting to some of you. But most people's eyes would glaze over and they would not remember that at all if you told them that after showing them Venus at Prairie Ridge. And Venus will be visible, by the way, at least at the beginning of the session, assuming they have a decent horizon to the west there. Yeah, okay. Yes, okay, good. Okay, another brave volunteer. Here's another version of it. This is from a book that is aimed at lay people who are wanting to learn more about the sky. Terence Dickinson's Night Watch. Somebody willing to read this? Okay, go for it.
Redneck version. Envision a planet where it is so hot that lead would be a convenient liquid to use in a thermometer.
Okay, so imagine somebody's at your telescope eyepiece and you go on and on about black body spectrums versus, hey, the temperature is so hot on that planet, you could melt lead. Probably the latter is going to be what they remember. Okay, so interpretation, just to define it more formally, a purposeful approach to communication that facilitates meaningful, relevant, and inclusive experiences that deepen understanding, broaden perspectives, and inspire engagement with the world around us. And just some basic principles is that you're taking the subject. So I'm thinking largely the scenario where you're showing somebody an object through a telescope and you're relating it to the lives of the person and people that are in line looking at it. And it goes beyond just providing information and facts to revealing deeper meaning. You all already instinctively did this when I was asking you about your favorite objects and why. And it's also, and I'll talk a little bit more about story and theme message, but basically people forget facts, but they remember stories and they remember themes and take home messages. And then you're also provoking people to broaden their horizons. Okay, so what is meaningful? So another way you can describe interpretation is it's educating with meaning. It's stuff that makes you think and stuff that makes you feel. So stuff that makes you think, those are intellectual connections. I experienced so much, whatever, it made my head spin. Stuff that makes you feel, that's emotional connections. I experienced seeing Saturn with all my heart. And so your task is to offer as many opportunities to find meanings as possible. Okay, so now think about meanings. Now, what do you see when you look at this? Some of you were already getting at this when we saw this picture earlier. And people in the chat, you feel free. What is the meaning of this? By the way, try not to be bothered like I am by the fact that it's not lined up right. Like the pointer stars don't go to the right place. Try not to get obsessed about that. What does this mean? Yeah, Anne. Can we send the microphone over?
So basically, I mean, what it would mean is that you're trying to find the North Star. In order to find the North Star, you need to know about these two constellations. Well, actually, aneurysms, the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper, and the measured stars, so that you can find that Big Dipper in the sky.
So this represents a way to find your way. Yeah. Okay. Any other meanings that you all see? Yeah, over here.
What I see is like a way to relate things back to something that's familiar. Like everybody knows what a big bear and a little bear is. So it's a way to categorize the skies in a way that is familiar to something that we can actually see in our somewhat regular lives. I mean, not here, but whoever first like decided should be bears. Decided like, oh, here's something in the heavens and here's how I relate it to something here on earth.
And depending on your audience, you have to gauge this. If they're really into Greek myth, for example, and they are old enough for a PG rated story, you can tell them about the story of Zeus and impregnating Callisto and how that all ended up with Callisto being turned into a bear, and then her son Arcus. Since not everybody here is over 18, I'm being very vague about this. But anyway, they got turned into bears. He grabbed them by their short, stumpy tails and lassoed them into the sky, and that's how they got these long tails. Or if you have somebody who's interested in cultural astronomy from other places, you might say, for example, to the Mi'kmaq, people indigenous to Northeast North America, they, and also the Cherokee as well, say, no, 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 bears don't have long tails. That Big Dipper, those 3 stars in the handle, that's not the tail of a bear. 3 hunters chasing the bear. They're all birds, at least in the Mi'kmaq version. And the first one is Robin, the marksman. The second one is Chickadee, the cook. And by the way, Mizar and Alcor, that's Chickadee and his cooking pot tucked under his wing. And then the last one is Moosebird. He lags behind, lets everybody else do all the work. They chase the bear from the spring until the fall. In the fall, the hunter's arrows pierce the skin of the bear. The blood of the bear falls to the ground and colors the leaves of autumn, and that is why maple trees turn red in the fall. So another way that you can relate those patterns of stars to people in a way that they might remember. Anything else that comes to mind about these patterns? Okay, so cultural astronomy, how different people have viewed the sky, navigation. Okay, what about this? You all already got at this a little bit, the meanings. Anybody else want to elaborate? What do you see? What would you want the public to know about this? Yes, right here. Can we bring the mic over here? Say that again in the microphone.
Go to the Sahara Desert and sightseeing there. Just be very hard because there's no light pollution.
Okay, so there's some places in the world you can go and see a really dark sky with lots of stars, and it's really beautiful.
All that is energy wasted because it's light pointing up instead of down. So
yeah, if you can see your porch light from outer space, probably have a pretty high electricity bill. So you can connect this. If somebody's told you they're a member of the Audubon Society and they really like birds, you can connect light pollution to bird migration and the danger it poses to birds and other wildlife. If somebody's told you they're an epidemiologist, you can be like, well, did you know? It turns out it's really bad for your health to be exposed to light at night, your physical health and your mental health. If somebody's very concerned about climate change, you can connect with them that way, talk about all that wasted energy and all the associated pollution and effects on the climate of generating energy that's not even being used. It's going up in the sky rather than down on the ground. You've got somebody who's worried about safety. You can talk about how this kind of light, that's counterproductive to your safety. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is something I tell a lot of people as far as earthquakes go. But in relating it into astronomy, you probably heard about this story. There was a earthquake in Los Angeles a long time ago, happened in the middle of the night, knocked out the power, and 911 operators got flooded with calls and said, "Hey, what's that big smoky cloud in the sky? Did a bomb go off or whatever?" And it was like, "No, that's the Milky Way. You've never seen it before." And I mean, that's just it just takes you aback that you have all this lighting just like blocking out everything that you could possibly see if the place was darker. I mean, it's just like that's incredible.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good one. Okay. All right. So putting this all together, consider, what do you want your audience, the people in your telescope line, for example, to care or learn about? Is there some concept you're talking about or some object you're showing? And then what are the associated meanings? And I would encourage you to think about universal concepts like things that anybody can relate to, like navigation and survival, cultural heritage, waste, beauty, death, deep time, that kind of thing. And I'm just thinking of an example, North Star. I heard Naveen, I think you were playing Across the Universe by the Beatles as one of the kind of what I think of as walk-in music at about 7:15. NASA beamed that song to the North Star a number of years ago as part of a celebration of an anniversary that NASA was having and the Deep Space Network was having and that the Beatles were having. So they beamed the song there. So there's a connection. If somebody likes the Beatles, you can work that in. Okay, and then considering your audience, and this is a key part we talked about, you want to make things, keep in mind, why did they come? What do you already know about them in terms of what they're interested in and what their background is? How can you link that object that you're showing in the telescope or this idea that you're talking about to some sort of universal concept like navigation or beauty or waste or whatever it is that creates opportunities for people to make those intellectual and emotional connections, to make them think and feel. So in other words, what are you going to say? Is there an analogy, a story, a demo, a quote, a picture you can share, or a question you can ask? And then here's the really boiled down version of all of that. Don't just say what the object is, tell its story. And when I say story, I mean that in a really broad way. Any sort of tidbit that has meaning. And a story can literally be one sentence long. It can be, that's the Ring Nebula. That's the future of our sun that you're looking at. And by the way, yes, you are allowed to speak Messier. People really do like to know the names of things. Just don't stop there. I got this talk title from a ranger at Bryce Canyon named Kevin Poe, and he gives this really great talk on how to do interpretation. And some of the astronomers took him very literally this particular year, because I remember I went out to this telescope. They've got like 30 telescopes set up during the astronomy festival at Bryce Canyon. I'm going to the different telescopes, and nobody will tell me what anything is that I'm looking at. They just keep saying, well, that's a galaxy that blah, 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 blah. I'm like, but which one? I have no idea what I saw that night. I just saw a bunch of fuzzy objects. So yes, people do like to know the names of things. You are allowed to say the names. Okay, so let's go through a few examples. And I know we're not going to have a beautiful waxing crescent moon at Prairie Ridge Eco Station on November 23rd, but the moon is very typically, an object that we would see at a skywatching event. So what are some little tidbits that you might tell the public about the moon? Yeah, Doug has got a look of thoughtfulness on his. Okay. Well, we don't have that much time. Okay. There we go.
I'll just tell one of the stories. I just talk about that there was a period in the moon's formation when it was formed, and that a lot of debris hit the moon's surface, and some of it was so hard that it cracked the moon's surface and unleashed a magma tsunami that ran across the face of the moon, broke through the mountains with that gap right there. We call that the Alpine Gap, and it filled up all the other low-lying areas. So I just try to get people to think about how big a tsunami of magma that might have been to just wipe out mountains and completely fill up all those low areas that we now call mare.
Great story. Thank you. We're putting you to work, Naveen, running around the room. Other things y'all might say about the moon. Also, I don't want to neglect the people in the chat either, if you can keep an eye on them as well. But
I'm watching them. I spend a lot of time telling, watch the craters, and a better time to see the moon is when it's not full, because everybody wants to see it full, right? And the most fun I've had at any event was an event we did at 3 Bear Acres, and a little kid came up and said, "It's too bad we can't see the rest of the moon." And I was doing electronically assisted. So I moved off, and everybody thought it was really neat to talk about that's Earth light reflecting back on it. So there's lots of things with the moon that I think it's one of the most fun to look at. So.
And that's a great example of responding to what somebody had said and helping them, push them a little bit more and help them understand more. Yeah. Oh, right here, second row.
somewhere for homeschool kids, and this mother and son came up to, and I could tell some remarks she made. I realized these are young Earth people.
Mm.
And then so the first question the son asked was, "What about the craters?" Ooh, because the obvious explanation is there were billions of years ago. They're billions of years ago. How much do you say that without contradicting mom? And I think I went in and said billion years ago anyway, and she didn't react. But I thought, oh, I hope I didn't just lay a few dead here.
And that would take us off into a whole nother realm, but we could do a whole thing on dealing with controversy as well and difficult questions.
So a few days ago, we were at the cider house, and we had the moon up, and there was two very prominent craters that had mountains in the middle. So I ended up explaining it like, did you see the commercial where a drop of water goes in, a drop goes into the water or into the milk and it rebounds up? And this is what you're looking at. And everybody's like, wow, that's so cool. And I just want to add, for globular clusters, I start talking to them about how to make gravy.
How to make gravy.
Hey, lumps in your gravy as you're stirring it. So the stars are being stirred and made, and the globular clusters are basically the gravy lumps. So everybody likes that, especially around Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's great. So that's use of an analogy and making things relevant to people's lives in a way that they'll remember. Same thing with the milk, too.
Online, Chris wrote, I like to show Claire observia effects like the lunar cross when they're visible.
Mm-hmm. And that makes people feel like they saw something cool and new that they'd never seen before, probably. Okay, so let's pick another object. And Saturn will be visible on November 23rd at this event. What might you tell the public about Saturn? And by the way, it will not look like this because it's looking more edge on right now than this image. What might you tell the public about Saturn? Okay, right here in the second row.
Saturn has the bluest object in the solar system. It's D ring, which is filled with water.
Ooh. Okay. What else?
So a really cool thing about Saturn is they have these shepherd moons, which means that these moons help form, while they don't form the rings, but they shepherd the rings so that they keep in line while they're going around, Saturn. And then also the rings were formed because something got too close to Saturn, and it's called something, I forget what it is, but it got too close, and an object broke up, and that's how the rings formed. At least that's what they think. So
people fighting over it here.
Yeah, I like mentioning, although this is the geek coming out of me, you can't see this kind of view from Earth because it's the light's coming in from the wrong direction. But I just like to talk about how, like, you know exactly where Saturn is in relation to Earth based on the shadow it's casting on the rings behind it. So in this case, we're not on Earth if we're looking at it from this perspective. But yeah, I mentioned things like that.
Well, surprisingly, I've had to be even more basic than that. You're looking at a planet, another planet, and people are just like, oh my gosh, I am? Really?
Yeah, Saturn's real. It really exists. Now, I learned this actually, Chapel Hill, has a big Halloween parade every Halloween. And one year I had some friends, and we went as the planets, and we were wearing like big pictures of the planets. They didn't have labels. It was just the planets. And huge picture of Saturn, huge picture of Jupiter. Everybody was confidently, for some reason, everybody feels the need to identify everybody's costume. People kept pointing to Saturn and saying things like Jupiter. And I know there's a level of inebriation that goes on Halloween and Chapel Hill, but I was like, my work as an educator will never be done. Because yeah, there a lot of people don't know the basics. So you can't assume, don't assume. Try to find out what people already know. Yeah. And somebody else, I think, has the mic.
The only other thing I was going to add was I spent a lot of time with Saturn telling them that the rings are now coming back, that they went away for a while.
Oh, in terms of face on, edge
Right.
on. Mhm.
But Dana stole one of my things. I was like the tipping of them at different points,
Yeah.
but also the fact that we live in a time when Saturn has rings, and there was a time when Saturn didn't have rings, and there's going to be a time in the future when Saturn doesn't have rings, and it's like just appreciate that whole interesting time and place thing, right? You know, we live in one of the only places where we get a solar eclipse. Right. That, you know, if people could travel around the universe, we'd be like a tourist destination for the way that our solar eclipses look.
Okay. I love so many things about what you just said. That's great. Oh, one more. Okay. What did the person online say?
You can fit 740 Earths into the mass of Saturn.
Which is incredible because in a telescope it looks so tiny.
And Saturn would float if you had a water bucket big enough.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, it would float in a bathtub, but it'd leave a ring. Sorry, that was bad. But for the right audience member, that would go over very well. Okay, so this is a screenshot from Stellarium for November 23rd at like 8 p.m. or something for whenever Jupiter's up. It'll be up during the event. What might you say about Jupiter? Or about its moons, or both?
Okay.
Is there a story you could tell? Yeah.
I might have the numbers off a little bit, but I like that Jupiter compared to the mass of the entire solar system is 1%. And everything but the sun is another 1%. And then the sun is everything else. So Jupiter is huge.
That's a good one.
So what I noticed is most of the time when we show people Jupiter or Saturn, they're like, what are those bright stars next to it?
Yes.
And then we say they're moons. And then they go, it has moons? And then it's like, yes, just like our moon. And then they really connect with that there's a moon.
Yeah, that's great. There's something you might say about Europa in particular right now, too, especially if somebody said they're interested in space missions. Yeah. Launching spacecraft to visit. Okay.
I like talking about, and this might be bad. At least it gets eye rolls from my nieces. The line of the moons and the like why are they like this and why aren't they like this? And talking about the ecliptic, and that when you're thinking about where they're lined up is like a representation of how the whole solar system is structured, and thinking about like sometimes even like saying, okay, like you take Jupiter's there and Mars is there and we're here, we're all in the same plane, right? Trying to think about it from a three-dimensional thing as opposed to just these little flat circles in the sky.
Yeah, great. Okay, is there one online?
Chris says that he always mentions that the largest moon around Jupiter is bigger than the planet Mercury.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Okay, Venus is going to be setting in the first part of the November. Trying to get everybody to come out November 23rd, by the way, if you can't tell. What might you say about Venus? We already talked about its temperature.
I mean,
but
the very simplest thing, like, yeah, that's a planet. Point at it. Like people don't realize it's a planet. It just looks like a bright star.
But why does it look like that? It doesn't look round. What's going on?
Well, I usually try to get it blown up enough to see the crescent to show them that this is like our moon. You know how the moon goes around, it's got phases, so does Venus. So I try and show that.
Yeah, and it's going to be gibbous, November 23rd.
Correct.
I pulled this from Stellarium, so yeah, it's great. I get it.
Russians space program and landing. I've always been fascinated by the Russian space programs and landing on Venus and what it took to actually land and what they learned trying to land on Venus about Venus.
Yeah, that's great. And that's multiple ways of connecting with people if they're interested in other countries, if they're interested in history, if they're interested in space missions, that hits all of them. Okay. All right. So think about what is your favorite object to see in a telescope and how might you talk about it with the public? Does anybody have an object that we haven't, like Doug, you were mentioning earlier, you really like the Orion Nebula. It's a way of talking about how stars have cycles of life and death and relating it to, you know, child, right? Babies are born, they're in a nursery, and this is a place where stars are being born.
I'll since I have the mic, go first.
Yeah.
We've already mentioned the Ring Nebula, but I really like talking about how with averted vision, trying connecting people's like you can look away and still see it. How for me, like the center dims and it kind of looks like a white blood cell, like if it was a red blood cell, but you know, with no color. So, and that other people may see things differently depending on how their eyes work.
Probably the Sea of Tranquility, because you could tell them about the history that Neil Armstrong and the other team landed there. You could tell them about the history.
Yeah. So you're going to be prepared to show the Sea of Tranquility on the moon. All right. Great. And Dana's taking the mic.
Online, one thing you can talk about is how you can see different constellations at different times of the year. So people need to keep coming out, see the differences and how they traveled across the night sky. And then Chris came back with, I prefer double star since they are deep sky objects that people can see color with their eyes, like Alberta. Alberta. Sorry, Alberta.
I didn't know that one. Yeah, that's great. And somebody in the back, did you want to speak? Yeah, back here in the back row.
And speaking of double stars, I often like talking about double stars because they're easy to see in light pollution. But we'll also attempt to link that into Star Wars and the binary sunset. Yeah. So, although at our last event, I ended up realizing most of those people had never seen Star Wars. But it was at least a good thing to link it to.
Yeah.
So they can say this is what a double star is.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I wanted to pontificate a little bit more about interpreting the telescope. I know we're out of time. Y'all can argue with me when I get to the end of this. I would say also be sure to pay attention to your line. Okay, maybe not when the grabby 4-year-old is at your eyepiece. Yes, you're going to want to put all your attention on any wild children. But my pet peeve is when there's a line of people waiting and they have no idea what they're in line for. So every once in a while, step aside and say, we are looking at the planet Saturn or whatever. We are looking at Jupiter. And when you're doing that, what you can do is just present little tidbits at a time. And also because you often don't have very much time with somebody at an eyepiece, especially if you have a line. So think about tidbits that you can present. And then also that you can present one and then another, so that if you're talking to the line, they're not hearing the same thing again and again. So we're looking at Jupiter. And then a minute later, you're going to see 4 of its moons tonight. And then, a minute later, one of the moons you're going to see of Jupiter is Europa. We just launched a mission to get there. What were you all doing 40 minutes ago? Well, the light you see from Jupiter left around that time. You can just go on and on and on if you give little tidbits. Yes.
The things that I think that we could do a better job at really organizing these things. So one of the things I think that we could really do to better organize these events is at least choose 1 to 10 astronomers who will actually be on an object. Have a sandwich board out there that says 1, 2, 3, 4, this is what you're looking at. And then you can have basically the numbers at the stations. where people can go. So they know what they're going to go and see. While people are in line, it'd be great for you to have an image of what they're about to see on your cell phone. And so you can say, hey, as you go up to the eyepiece, this is what we're looking for, and then you can kind of give them some of that talk about what they're about to see. I've seen it done this way in other places, and it works out really well. People are kind of prepared for what they're going to look at.
Yeah, you don't want 10 telescopes all looking at Jupiter. Although, sometimes when it's the only thing you can see, or, you have one patch of clear sky or something, you have to do what you have to do. Okay, and then just a few more things. You're allowed to boss your line around. So don't be afraid to do that. And you can swing the entire group over if you need to, if they start eclipsing somebody else's line. And then, yes, so rules, yes. One way to do it is to focus on the equipment rather than on the person. So you can talk about the telescope needs to be perfectly steady. So what I'm going to ask you to do is put your hands behind your back or put your hands on this stool here or that kind of thing. So rather than don't touch the telescope, but if you let go, the vibrations will stop and the object will stop moving out of view. Another thing to do is prevention is everything. Trying to catch people as they're coming onto the field and give them a little etiquette talk. Yes.
I found that it helps with kids to have a step ladder with like the handle. Kids want to hold on to something when they're leaned over.
Yes.
You give them something to hang on to, they're less likely to hit your scope or grab your scope and use that to bear their weight.
Put your hands here. You can even have a red flashlight ready to show them where to put their hands. Works for adults too. Handcuffs, yeah, maybe not. It's a different kind of event.
Some people use their arm.
Ah. Mm-hmm.
Their arm. The kids can hold on to someone else's arm.
Yes. Yes.
So the kids can hold on to someone else's arm,
parent's arm,
and it steadies them if you don't have anything. But definitely, it's a good thing to have, a step ladder or something that they can hold on to.
Yeah. With young children, I always tell the adults who are with them, adult, I want you to look first. Because they always, you all know this, they always put their kid right up to the eyepiece, and the kid is like looking at the eyepiece rather than through the eyepiece, or they're grabbing on it and nothing is working, and the parent can't help them because they haven't looked yet. So they have no idea how to help them. And it's like, no, you look first, and then you'll be able to help your child. So that's my number one rule with parents and kids.
I'm sorry, you were. Yeah. I've also tried to figure out if you're doing EAA, for example. I've worked with Dean a lot, and you almost have to put cones around the telescope. And it's even worse if you've got like two Dobbs running and somebody walks up to your EAA that took you 40 minutes to get lined up, and they went, hey, how about now? So, yeah.
Yeah.
Know your group.
Yes. And if possible, I mean, at some sites it works better than others, but if it's possible to try to capture people as they're coming onto the field and give them that little talk, even if the only thing you say is don't touch anything without anybody's, without permission of the person who owns it. Yes.
They know. Here, let me help you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, I got.
I think we're actually out of time.
The step ladder, not just for kids, but we ended up getting them because it was. We had a couple 5'0" women, and they had never looked through a telescope before, and they couldn't look through my telescope because I just couldn't, put it down for everybody else. And one husband wanted to pick up one of the gals. The other one wanted to bring a chair over, and they both so embarrassed. And that's when I bought the little stool.
Mm-hmm.
I have a little stool. But I do have one question for you. This thing baffles me every single time. The biggest question I get, and I don't, how far away is it? And I'm almost to the point of it's far, far away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's light years, it's parsecs, it's nothing anyone can understand. So do you have an advice for that question.
Yeah, I usually, if I know the number, I say the number. But then I usually go into the whole, the sky is a time machine, and then try to translate to light minutes, light hours, or light years, whatever applies. And in fact, thank you for that segue. Acknowledgements to people who have helped me learn things. Statewide Star Party theme this year is Your Place in Space, and one of the activities is telescopes as time machines. And that encourages you to relate the object that you're looking at in terms of this is how many years ago the light left it, and when it makes sense, relate that to some historical event on Earth. Sometimes that will make sense, sometimes that won't. But as some of you know, my absolute favorite star story is about Arcturus. Because it is the story, it is the star that opened the 1933 World's Fair. And the reason why they picked it is that the light hitting Earth in 1933, they thought had left the star in 1893 because they thought it was 40 light years away, meaning that the light had left the star at the time of the first Chicago World's Fair. Telling the story properly takes 5 minutes. So that was the super short version. But it's a great story to tell when Arcturus is up, if you have anybody from Chicago, and if you are so lucky as to know that somebody is 36 or 37 years old, because it's actually 36.7 light years away. Or 40 for that matter. You can tell it to the 40-year-olds too. So I got to tell that story a couple of times at a private event we did at Honeysuckle Tea House, because we were doing a Find Your Birthday Star activity. So every single 36 or 37-year-old I inflicted this story upon. But they loved it. They loved it. And it illustrates how the sky is like a time machine. So that's usually where I go with that. I know I'm out of time, so I just wanted to quickly say that 13th annual statewide star party will be Friday, April 4th, Saturday, April 5th, 2025. That's about a first quarter moon. And we are taking applications now from host organizations, and RAC, heads up. I saw yet another group that I don't think you've worked with yet mentioned your club. So I will definitely be in touch with you, Stephen.
Yeah, requests are already coming in.
What's that? The
Requests are already coming in.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Did you hear from the people in Rocky Mount? You will if you have.
Nashville.
Nashville. Yes. That's what I meant, actually. Nashville. Okay. Very good. And we have a beautiful Star Party poster designed by Tyler Nordgren, the astronomer and artist. And it's part of the North Carolina Science Festival, and we're funded by NC Space Grant, so we can give host organizations a kit of activities. And you all of you will be invited. Actually, any astronomy club member in North Carolina can come, but special invitation to RAC and Chaos to mingle with the accepted Star Party hosts at Morehead Planetarium in Chapel Hill on Friday evening, January 17th. This is not an official meeting for you all or anything. It's like not your regular indoor meeting time.
Correct. Ours is a week before that.
Yes.
And we just wanted to point out this is a special meeting. Please don't go month to month thinking Friday night. This is another meeting. Go to this.
Yeah.
It's on the calendar.
It's a bonus.
It's a bonus.
It's a bonus. And yes, we will show you a planetarium show somehow. You'll be in the planetarium. We will do cool things with the planetarium sky. Yes. You can stand next to me and watch me hit the buttons. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what the front of the building looks like. Actually, the public entrance, you can't see, it's on the other side, but we'll probably have you all enter right on the parking lot. So mark your calendars for that. And thank you, you all. I have taken up all my time.